This little boy naturally was by Chiron. This little boy naturally was by Chiron. During his 3,000 years of cultivation he has read various techniques, some of which were not limited by cultivating stage, and he trained them to the point of being supernatural. This was one of them. Using this technique he was able to change his body at will. This time, in order to see what kind of plan behind this, he transformed into a child. Usually, young boys and girls were the favorite victims of the demonic cultivators. They could provide pure energy, whether it's sex or soul-sucking, of course, including large-scale blood sacrifices. After following the 2 official missions to the enshrinement house, Chiron was taken by 2 maids to a bathhouse next to him, helped him clean the stains on his body, changed him into a new suit, and then he was taken into a small room. After a while, someone brought a table of meals and at the same time ordered Chiron to stay in place and not run around. After seeing the people leaving, Chiron settled these meals, and at the same time he released his soul awareness. He searched in the enshrinement house and soon found the 2 officials who were talking with a man, whom Chiron also recognized. It just happened to be the #1 guardian of Shangshuan Kingdom, Sima Inbo, whom he had met at Mang Mountain. After finding them, Chiron immediately began to monitor their conversation. It's done well this time. Chiron heard that Sima Inbo was complimenting the 2 officials. Although it's just a ceremony, this boy's bone roots are extraordinary, in all aspects are the best choice. If he appears in the festival ceremony, presumably the spirit of all previous emperors will also be relieved, and change the misfortune of the country. I will report to my master that you 2 have worked hard. Thank you, Guardian Sima. The 2 officers bowed. After the 2 officials went away, Sima Inbo stood alone and thought for a while, then went back to his desk and started to deal with the files on the table. Chiron followed him with soul awareness, monitoring his every move. It's strange. It's strange. Chiron took back his soul awareness and was surprised. Disguised as a child, it has been 3 days since he came to the shrine, and over the past 3 days he has been monitoring the actions of key figures such as Sima Inbo, Emperor Shangshuan, Prince, and the spiritual advisor Fu Qianqiu with his soul awareness. No abnormalities were found. The Shangshuan Emperor went to the court and handled the memorials on time as usual. At night, he would randomly choose several women in the harem to sleep with. As an emperor he was not superb but still pretty good. The crown prince was still very young and was currently studying for various knowledge and martial arts under the arrangement of the emperor. Depending on his performance he was just a relatively intelligent child. And Sima Inbo and Fu Qianqiu have acted regular cultivators for the past 3 days. Chiron has observed their practice. Sima Inbo has cultivated a basic fire attribute cultivation method. As for Fu Qianqiu, his cultivation method did take on a little bit of Qingming sword sex breathing technique. From Chiron's perspective, it can basically be determined that these 2 people have indeed not learned any demonic cultivation methods. After all, he has encountered all major evil sects before. Among them, the previous great elder of heavenly demon sect dared to use him as a bad example and mocked the slow progress of Taoism's disciples, saying they had no future, so he went to the door and beat him mercilessly. The previous leader of Blood God sect was also killed for the same reason. Chiron could see their demonic cultivation methods at the first glance, not to mention a foundation establishment stage and a 9th layer Qi refining stage. In short, after observing these days, the most suspicious one was Tang Ruowei. How successful her puberty was, Chiron has measured it himself, but in his occasional observation, when this girl went out, she was standing with a pair of large breasts. Moreover, Chiron once, with his soul awareness, saw the princess sneaking into her own palace. Behind her mirror in that palace, there was even a special secret room. Whenever she came out, her boobs would become bulging and round, and Chiron was quite sure that Tang Ruowei couldn't change the physical state at will like him. So he doubted that this was a new, special demonic technique. If it wasn't for the character of Tang Ruowei, plus she really only had a strong and stubborn spirit, Chiron would doubt whether the princess was behind the scenes. Could it be a misunderstanding? Shangshuan Kingdom's situation became difficult because of the bad political movements. The spiritual advisor just had some relationship with a disciple of Qingming sword sect. Tang Ruowei's hostility towards the cultivator was only from her subjective impression. A lot of materials missing from the practice market were just bought by a demonic cultivator who happened to pass by. As the saying goes, the world is large, everything is possible, it's a fucking lie. Chiron did not believe that all of this was due to coincidence. If one believed in accidents, coincidences, and destiny, Chiron should have exhausted his life for 3,000 years ago, and go into reincarnation wheel. The more these people did not show their tails, the more doubt Bai Bairan has about them. I am Bai Chiron. I have to find out the truth. Since this road is not working, I will change into another. Thinking of this, Bai Chiron reached out his hand and did a mysterious hand seal. The body's true chi turned into infinite spiritual power, and after a while Bai Chiron took a step forward, left a clone that looked exactly like him. He looked at the clone that he had left behind, which maintained the attitude of a young child, and returned to the small bed in the room to sit properly. Bai Chiron's body became higher and higher, until he was restored to normal, then stepped out and disappeared. At the same time, in the back garden of Shangshuan Kingdom Palace, Tang Ruowei, wearing a luxurious dress, carried her skirt and found her father who was drinking tea and enjoying flowers. At the same time, in the back garden of Shangshuan Kingdom Palace, Tang Ruowei, wearing a luxurious dress, carried her skirt and found her father who was drinking tea and enjoying flowers. Father Emperor. Tang Ruowei's face was eager. I just heard that you temporarily changed the rules and suddenly take 200 boys and girls to participate in the ceremony. What? Ruowei, you are already a big girl, why are you still so brazen? Shangshuan Emperor put down the tea bowl, sighed and pointed to the seat next to him. Sit down first. How can I rest assured in the future knowing you are like this? Don't mention the future. You always tell me that the ancestors' law cannot be changed lightly. Why now you hastily changed the law of the ceremony for heaven worshipping? Tang Ruowei sat down next to his father and asked indifferently. This is an adjustment that I made after consulting with the spiritual advisor. Shangshuan Emperor replied. Recently the Shangshuan kingdom has suffered many natural disasters and demons. The spiritual advisor said that the national luck is frustrated and I need to use this method to sacrifice and change the national luck. That spiritual advisor again? Tang Ruowei bitterly advised. Instead of blaming the national luck for these things, why don't you try to make good efforts and make this country better by your own governance? Ruowei. Shangshuan Emperor replied somewhat angrily. Watch your tone, I don't want to talk to you now. Tang Ruowei flushed her face with anger and was silent for a long time before she squeezed out a word. Yes. You ran out of the house some time ago. I haven't settled with you yet. The Emperor of Shangshuan Kingdom saw his daughter act honestly and continued, I happen to arrange it for you today, lest you run out in the wild. He exclaimed, Come, go and invite Sima Inbo. After hearing his words, Tang Ruowei's heart suddenly felt a bad feeling. Before long, Sima Inbo followed the attendants to the palace's back garden. Long live your majesty, long live your highness. Because he was a disciple of the spiritual advisor, also the #1 guardian, Sima Inbo's status in the Shangshuan kingdom was special, so he did not need to pay as much respect to Tang Ruowei and Shangshuan Emperor as others. He simply bowed his hands and did not kneel. Sima Inbo, you can sit. Shangshuan Emperor smiled, and the next sentence really sold his daughter. To come to you today there is one thing to discuss with you. You see, you are now unmarried and still single, just as Ruowei's age has arrived. It would be better for you to marry her and make you the national groom? Father Emperor. Tang Ruowei shouted but was stopped by the Shangshuan Emperor. Father, why did you push me to Sima Inbo? Tang Ruowei hurried to his father and asked in a low voice, I don't like him at all. Ruowei, Shangshuan Emperor also whispered, Guardian Sima is handsome and talented, not only he is a cultivator, but he is also a good man and, more importantly, I have checked his ethnicity and his mother is very plump. Looking at his daughter who looked like dirt, Shangshuan Emperor quietly said, Ruowei, our Shangshuan royal family has always tried to change the fact that the royal women's breasts are small. In our kingdom, women with the curvy body are always much adored, so this is not only a shame for you but also a disgrace to the royal family. I know your dream, but it is an impossible dream, but if you marry Sima Inbo, the children between you inherited his genes, maybe you can keep your children and offspring from following in your footsteps. What a damn reason. Tang Ruowei said with a dark face. The dream was come true by my children, is it still my dream? Besides, how many generations has this been, and I haven't seen the good gene that I inherited from my mother. But Shangshuan Emperor ignored her, looked at Sima Inbo who was standing aside. Sima Inbo, would you like to marry Ruowei? Shangshuan Emperor asked again. Sima Inbo glanced at Tang Ruowei, glanced very vaguely from the latter's big chest, then lowered his head and said, I'm willing. Well? Shangshuan Emperor laughed with a smile of success. But since it's already settled, you can't regret it at that time. Even if you are an apprentice of the master, if you are wronged by Ruowei at that time, I will also ask you for the crime with the master. A king tells no joke, this is natural. Sima Inbo bowed his head. Shangshuan Emperor laughed and was very happy. Sima Inbo laughed and was very happy too, while Tang Ruowei's face was as dark as the bottom of the pot. It seems that everything was well prepared. Before returning, Shangshuan Emperor arranged her Tang Ruowei. The Shangshuan Emperor was so anxious to sell her. One reason was that he was afraid she would continue to be wild, and the other naturally knew what Tang Ruowei was hiding. Her chest was padded, because she happened to be born in the Shangshuan kingdom, where plump was equal beauty. Tang Ruowei's situation may be difficult to find a satisfactory husband's family in the future, but Shangshuan Emperor did not want to marry her to a foreign country. If he knew what Tang Ruowei really looked like, maybe Sima Inbo would not smile so happily. Tang Ruowei had to marry a disciple of her most disgusted cultivator, so she was naturally reluctant. Rather than marry Sima Inbo, a good-looking fellow, she preferred marry a normal man. After all, it was her father who made the marriage contract. Tang Ruowei didn't dare to object directly. However, since the situation has developed to the present, she was also ready in her heart. After the ceremony of sacrifice was over, she was going to sneak out of the palace, leave the territory of the Shangshuan kingdom and went away. The night before the ceremony, Bai Qiran went to Shangshuan Imperial Mausoleum, which was 100 miles away from Shangshuan Palace. The night before the ceremony, Bai Qiran went to Shangshuan Imperial Mausoleum, which was 100 miles away from Shangshuan Palace. This was the second breakthrough he chose. Since he suspected that there was something behind the ceremony, but found no clues on the organizer, he simply went directly to the location and checked to see if there was any problem. After a brief inquiry, Bai Qiran successfully got the location of the Imperial Mausoleum in the Shangshuan Kingdom, which was basically unknown to everyone, and came here that night. The mausoleum was guarded by heavy armored soldiers. Thousands of armies have layered to defend the royal tombs, but these obviously had no effect on Bai Qiran. He didn't even need to use spells, just relying only on breath-holding and light weight to easily cross the eyes of the army, and went into the imperial tomb undetected. As a place where the emperors of Shangshuan were buried since ancient times, this mausoleum was built with style. Inside it, there was a spacious stone avenue, which could accommodate 4 horse carriages side by side, extending from the entrance to the tomb, and 2 rows of stone beasts looked at each other on both sides of the avenue, and at their end, they were the tall royal altar and the royal tomb, where the deceased emperors slept under for eternity. After Bai Qiran arrived, he first looked at the location of the altar and the tomb. Then he went straight into the ground and began to peek into the tombs of the kings using soul awareness. More than 3,000 years ago, when Bai Qiran was born, just before the end of the war between humans and demons, the demons had to retreat to the barren land. Because of the previous catastrophe, 9 provinces abolished the old calendar and began to use another one which was currently in use, Detsang calendar. And he remembers that the country of Shangshuan Kingdom seems to have been established in the year 1800 of Detsang calendar. That was when he was more than 1,800 years old. Because Qingming sword sect was next to it, this country has existed for a very long time. Until now, it has a history of about 1,200 years. On average, each generation of emperors in the Shangshuan kingdom reigned for about 50 years. Counting it down, there should be a 24th generation emperor by now. In this mausoleum, the sleeping positions of the emperors were also in the order of time, from deep to shallow. In the early years, when Shangshuan was first established, there were a lot of wars. There were also many emperors who died on the battlefield and left no corpse, thus inside their tomb there were only clothes. According to the results of Bai Qiran's scan, a total of 18 corpses were sleeping in the tomb, and several other tombs were empty. The relics placed inside have been worn away by time. According to the results of Bai Qiran's scan, a total of 18 corpses were sleeping in the tomb, and several other tombs were empty. The relics placed inside have been worn away by time. Sweeping back and forth twice, Bai Qiran found a strange thing. This mausoleum is also empty? His soul awareness scanned into the tomb of the 16th emperor of Shangshuan. At least there should be some relics in this grave. In the tomb of the 15th emperor of Shangshuan, the relics buried with the corpses were kept in clear outlines, but the tomb of the 16th emperor, which must appear in a later date, was empty. Go in and see. At the foot of Bai Qiran's foot, his body plunged directly into the soil, and in the blink of an eye he came to the tomb of the 16th emperor. The tomb was empty, there was only a huge sarcophagus, filled with toxic gases formed after being buried underground for years, but these had no effect on Bai Qiran. After coming here, he quickly walked towards the sarcophagus and reached out to lift it up. With a move of his hand, the rivets and machines used to seal the sarcophagus were shattered directly by Bai Qiran's great force, and the coffin flew up and was inserted into the soil layer above the tomb. Chiron waved away the dust and looked into the sarcophagus. Sure enough, the yellow coffin was empty. Huh, what's this? After glancing at it, Chiron suddenly found some black marks on the yellow brocade. These black marks originally seemed to be some kind of liquid, but now they have dried up. He touched it and placed it in front of his nose, smelling human blood. Chiron's expression became focused, and he carefully looked at these black traces. When he first scanned here, because there was no energy fluctuation in these traces, he thought it was just the dirt stained on the yellow brocade. But now when he took a closer look, he realized that these black traces might be runes, which formed a formation. He compared it with the various formations stored in his mind for more than 3,000 years, one by one, and then tried to re-engrave the original version with his true energy. Sure enough, the blood-flowing formation of Blood God sect. This formation was the most notorious formation in the Blood God sect. It is mainly used in conjunction with blood coagulation spell, which could easily coagulate the blood of a cultivator. It's very vicious to kill opponents in this way, but a disciple of Blood God sect could also use it on himself, mainly to pretend to be dead and escape. And this blood-flowing formation was used by those to resuscitate the blood in their whole body and reawaken themselves after using blood coagulation spell. That being said, it is true that there is a demonic cultivator lurking in the Shangshuan kingdom. Chiron clapped his hands, stood up, his eyes flickered. Or simply, the Shangshuan emperor of this generation is a demonic cultivator of the Blood God sect. He gathers young boys and girls. Did he want to perform blood sacrifice to improve his cultivation, or extended his life? Anyway, all of this should become clear at the ceremony tomorrow. He walked around the sarcophagus twice in the tomb and searched according to the custom of the Blood God sect. Sure enough, in the stratum directly below the altar, he found a formation inscribed with human blood. The human blood here was still fresh. It seemed that the demonic cultivator just made this formation recently. Chiron opened his spirit eyesight and saw countless lost souls trapped in human blood, struggling in pain, but restrained by the formation and unable to die. It seems that many human-eating demon events in the Shangshuan kingdom should be caused by him. Chiron looked at this scene with some anger in his heart, but after his 3,000 years of life, he has been able to control his temper well. But this formation is really so rough that I want to change it for him. It seems that he is not an official student from the Blood God sect, but a loose cultivator who learns from an incomplete book. Taking a cursory look, Chiron did not touch the formation and retreated from the tomb. Now that the demonic cultivator was not there, if his formation was destroyed, it may alert him and cause a lot of sacrifices. Those innocent souls were not too late to be rescued for a while, and tomorrow was already the day of the ceremony. As a member of the 200 boys and girls, Chiron decided to prepare a surprise for the demonic cultivator and make him taste his own medicine. After returning to the enshrinement and switching with his own clone, Chiron fell asleep in bed. When the sky was only slightly bright in the early morning of the next day, two guardians who were at the 5th layer of Qi refining stage came in and took him to the compound of the offering house. After returning to the enshrinement and switching with his own clone, Chiron fell asleep in bed. When the sky was only slightly bright in the early morning of the next day, two guardians who were at the 5th layer of Qi refining stage came in and took him to the compound of the offering house. There were many other children in the yard. Chiron counted them. There were exactly 100 boys and 100 girls, for a total of 200 children. He didn't know where those officials found so many children. He could only say that under the pressure of the emperor and the spiritual advisor, these guys who usually lazied around really have become quite an efficiency. After staying in the courtyard for a while, Sima Inbo and other guardians appeared in front of the children. The young and handsome guardian cheerfully talked to these children about the standing position at the ceremony. They also instructed them not to run around, and after everyone's offerings were watched carefully, they directed everyone to set off for the imperial tomb. Out of the enshrinement, a row of horse-drawn carriages has long been lined up on the avenue, and there were cavalry soldiers from the Shangshuan kingdom to accompany them. 200 boys and girls were brought to the carriage and put on the carriage. Then the group rushed to the mausoleum ahead of the emperor. The ceremony of heaven worshipping in the Shangshuan kingdom, according to the rules, must start at about 7 a.m. and arrive at the emperor's mausoleum at 9 a.m., so the guardians must prepare all the matters of the boy and girl and sacrifices in advance. 200 virgin boys and girls, under the command of Sima Inbo, formed a weird shape in front of the altar, which just printed a certain array of Blood God sect. Moreover, A hidden formation was also activated to restrain these children and prevent them from running around. In the course of the arrangement, Bai Qiran had been paying attention to Sima Inbo's expression, and after seeing that he did not seem to have signs of being controlled, Bai Qiran knew in his heart. So when Sima Inbo ordered him and other boys and girls to stand in front of each other with a first-class oblation, he pretended to look innocent and asked, "Guardian uncle, why do we stand like this? I think the other uncles are in 2 rows beside the avenue?" As he said, he tried to make his look more immature and cute, looking up to Sima Inbo. Ah! Sima Inbo's face seemed to flash a little hesitation, and then he showed a kind smile, smiling while touching Bai Qiran's head. "I don't know, this is the standing position passed down by the above people, we all listen to them." "Including you?" Bai Qiran continued to ask. "Did His Majesty the Emperor or the spiritual advisor say that?" "All right." Sima Inbo avoided his gaze and did not answer, pushing Bai Qiran to the designated position to stand. "Don't talk for a while, the ceremony will soon pass." Pretending to be obedient, Bai Qiran stood in place, turned his head and then sneered. "If you are ashamed, why should you do such a thing in the first place?" When the sun rose high, the emperor's team finally arrived. When the sun rose high, the emperor's team finally arrived. Looking from a distance, the team outside the royal mausoleum, with bright yellow tents and flags, stretched like a long dragon for 2 or 3 miles. Tang Ruowake was also in it. At the moment she was standing with her brother, the crown prince. They followed the emperor and the spiritual advisor and led the team towards the royal mausoleum. The princess looked serious today, her eyes flickered, she didn't seem to be in a good mood, and she seemed to be thinking and worrying about something. She followed the emperor and the spiritual advisor to bypass the composition of the boys and girls under the guide of Sima Ingbua, came to the altar. An overcast cloud came over, covering part of the daylight, making the sky a little gloomy, but the emperor and the spiritual advisor did not care and continued to go on stage. In the front and the back of the altar, the spiritual advisor lit 3 incense sticks. They released green smoke, and the emperor turned to face the officials and generals under the altar. "Since the founding of the Shangshuan kingdom, we have gone through 1,200 years. Previous emperors' spirits in heaven have protected us from the prosperity of the Shangshuan kingdom to this day. Now in our kingdom the demons are causing chaos. As an emperor, I see Shangshuan people like my children. Seeing that they are devoured by demons, my heart is miserable. Therefore today I hold this ceremony to worship heaven. Let's pray to previous emperor's spirit in heaven to bless us." After finishing this speech, the emperor paused for a while. He took 3 incense sticks handed by the spiritual advisor, bowed to the mausoleum, and then inserted them into the big cauldron in front of him. "Now the sacrifice begins," he announced. The emperor paused, then said, "Generals, take the fresh blood of 200 boys and girls, respectfully ask the ancestors to come out of the tomb. Get the fresh blood and comfort the ancestors." The spiritual advisor also spoke at this moment. "Respectfully, ask the previous emperor go to the tomb." "Wait." Tang Ruowei, who stood aside, exclaimed, "Father Emperor, spiritual advisor, what are you talking about?" But no one paid her attention. Tang Ruowei looked to the left and right, and found that her father, brother, generals, soldiers and officials under the stage all had a dull expression. "What is happening? Her Highness, please be calm." At this time, Sima Inbo led a group of guardians to the altar, came to the emperor's tomb and said to Tang Ruowei, "The ceremony is about to begin. Please pay respect your ancestors." "Sima Inbo?" Tang Ruowei was shocked and angry. "You." Sima Inbo ignored her. Along with other guardians, he bowed to the mausoleum. "We disciples respectfully ask Master to come out of the tomb. Respectfully ask Master to come out of the tomb." As the words fell, dark clouds surging in the sky completely blocked the daylight, and a purple thunderbolt fell from the sky, splitting the Shangshuan's royal mausoleum directly in half. A mist of blood visible to the naked eye gushed from the rift in the emperor's mausoleum, and then in a burst of wild laughter, a figure dressed in a yellow robe came out of the mausoleum. "Shangshuan, I'm back." This figure walked out of the haze and came to the outside of the mausoleum. It turned out to be a young and dark-haired young boy. He paced to the middle of the 2 rows of guardians. Sima Inbo and other guardians bowed their heads lower, while Tang Ruowei looked at the young man and froze in place. "Ancestor." She compared the portraits she had seen in the ancestral hall, took a spit and said hardly, "Tang Zhoxia, Emperor Shinshu." "That's right, my child." The young man sneered. "Seeing me, are you happy?" Tang Ruowei bowed her head and said nothing. Tang Zhoxia smiled even more happily. But what he didn't know was that among the 200 boys and girls below, there was a little boy with a brighter smile on his face. Of course I am happy. Chiron lowered his head and whispered to himself with a smile, "You are finally caught by me, the cat is out of the bag." Tang Zhoxier ignored his descendant, he looked up at the sky, then turned to Sima Inbo and asked. Tang Zhoxier ignored his descendant, he looked up at the sky, then turned to Sima Inbo and asked, "I'm hungry. How about the blood I asked you to look for?" "It's all here." Sima Inbo pulled the flag from his sleeves and then pointed to the 200 boys and girls. After seeing that something was wrong, many of these children wanted to escape, but the formation under their feet tied them down. Seeing Tang Xie, they suddenly cried and some of them wet their pants on the spot. "Good." Tang Zhoxian nodded with satisfaction and waved, "Come on, get blood for me." Following his order, 2 rows of officers and men in the army stood out, pulled out the machete that dangled from the waist, and walked towards the boys and girls. "Wait a minute." Tang Ruowei shouted loudly. She ran to Tang Zhoxia and raised her eyebrows and asked, "Ancestor, as the Emperor of Shangshuan, why are you killing the people of Shangshuan today? Is there anything wrong with it?" Tang Zhoxia replied lazily, "I am the Emperor, they are grassroots people. Isn't the duty of these lowly people is to die for their Emperor? Being able to become blood sacrifices and help me to improve, this is their honor." "What a nonsense saying." Tang Ruowei angered, "That's not something a human should say." "Well, my child, during my reign I increased the territory of Shangshuan Kingdom by 2/3. But the more I battled, the more I felt that mortals have limits." Tang Zhoxia pulled out his bloody red nails. "Even if I can conquer the entire Gu province, no, even if I conquer the world, there is still a group of beings above my head. No matter how many armies I have, with the best blades and the thickest armor, I can't beat them. These immortals just need a sword to kill me. I don't like that. I am an emperor. I'm better and more talented than others. Then I should be the one who steps on others' heads." "What do you want to say in the end?" Tang Ruowei asked. "I want to say, I haven't been a human for a long time." Tang Zhoxia chuckled, "Do it." The 2 platoons of officers and soldiers continued to advance. The blades in their hands expressed cold light, reflecting the horrified expressions of the children. "Her Royal Highness. Her Royal Highness." Sima Inbo also advised at this time, knowing when to just let go is the right way of life. Besides, the power of His Majesty has improved, it is also a great thing for our kingdom. "Sima Inbo, you have no ball." Tang Ruowei glanced at him, her eyes full of contempt. "I'm different from you." She ran to Shangshuan Emperor, who was still in a dull state, and pulled out the long sword worn around his waist for etiquette. With a sword in hand, Tang Ruowei stood up, jumped, and landed in front of the 2 rows of soldiers. "Stop." The blade reflects the glorious brightness, and the golden chi was wrapped around the blade. Tang Ruowei waved her sword, and a row of soldiers fell to the ground. "Ha, not bad." Tang Zhoxia snorted coldly, raised his finger slightly and hooked. Several generals in the army stepped out of the array, pulled out their weapons and rushed towards Tang Ruowei. These generals were also martial arts masters in the chi refining stage. As a result, Tang Ruowei was quickly defeated and captured. "Pooh." After being detained, the princess still refused to bow her head and spit very rudely. She looked at her ancestor and traitors in an angry manner. "Master." Sima Inbo quickly bowed down. "Her Royal Highness is young and vigorous. After all, she's your descendant. Please give her to me. This disciple will make her become obedient." "Inbo, have you forgotten what I teach you?" Tang Zhoxia said lazily, "I don't need disobedient people. Besides, we are already cultivators, so we don't have to worry about the relationship between mortals. If you want beautiful women, there will be countless of them from other countries, or from the cultivator world. As long as you get stronger, you can get whatever you want. For this ungrateful girl, eat her. You look for virgin boys and girls for me, this is your reward." "Master." Sima Inbo struggled for a few seconds, then bowed, "Yes. Thank you, Master." "Well, you're going to reach the foundation establishment stage soon. After you build the foundation, you can formally start to practice blood god art." Tang Yin smiled evilly, "Drinking her blood will help you build a foundation. Bullshit." At this time, a sudden loud noise rang out in the royal tomb. "Huh." Tang Zhoxia's face darkened. "Who?" But the voice ignored him and continued, "Build the foundation by drinking the blood of the royal family? Why don't I know? You junior, practicing a crooked path and incomplete skills, yet still dare to guide others to build foundations? Just a half-assed demonic cultivator, Do you think you can build a foundation by doing harm to others to improve yourself? Do you know how difficult it is to build a foundation? Don't underestimate the foundation establishment stage. It's you who's talking. Tang Zhoxia hummed evilly, I'm now in the foundation establishment stage. Why can't I teach others to build the foundation? You are in the foundation establishment stage, so what? You don't understand building a foundation at all. The voice was violent. Furthermore, look at your plan today. Do you want to rely on these blood sacrifices to advance to golden core stage? The formation is so inaccurate that I, a righteous cultivator, can't stand it anymore. You don't understand basic things like the fine-tuning according to the timing or tailor according to the environment, and you say you know how to build the foundation? You are in the foundation establishment stage only because you have good luck. You talk big but you're hiding like a rat. Hearing this voice, Tang Zhoxia frowned and said, Come out and meet me. Boom. As soon as his voice came down, in the array of 200 boys and girls, a powerful burst of energy broke out directly, and several generals who suppressed Tang Ruowei, as well as the soldiers who raised their blades, all flew out, and then again a gentle burst of energy swept through the rest of the boys and girls, put them into a deep sleep. A boy with an angry face walked out of the array. With each step, his body grew up an inch, his hair gradually changed color, and after a crackling noise, he stood in front of Tang Ruowei and had become Bai Qiran with white hair and eyebrows. Bai Qiran? Tang Ruowei said suddenly, How will you be here? I was here to remove the evil. Bai Qiran looked gloomy. But I found this little devil to be very shameless. It's him? Sima Inbo's face also showed surprise. You know him? Tang Zhoxia asked. I met him once in Mang Mountain. Sima Inbo was relieved. Master, he's just a qi refining stage. Qi refining stage? Tang Zhoxia laughed. I think you are the one who speaks loudly. Is that so? Bai Qiran sneered and then casually pointed out several shortcomings of Tang Zhoxia, from his formation to moves, from techniques to cultivation path, and finally even commented on his grave. Tang Zhoxia made a secret comparison and found that it really improved a lot according to what Bai Qiran said. Seeing his expression, Bai Qiran asked, How about that? You ignorant junior. So what? Tang Zhoxia opened his arms. You're still just a cultivator during the qi refining stage. And I? A cultivator who is just one step away from the golden core stage. Bai Qiran looked at him and didn't speak. Moreover, I am not only a cultivator in the foundation establishment stage, but I am also the emperor of Shangshuan. He said loudly, I have 3,000 soldiers, 28 guardians, and I myself have a higher cultivation stage than you. I don't need to do it by myself. I only need to give an order to decapitate you. How can you fight with me? Bai Qiran looked silently to the left and right. Thousands of imperial army soldiers in this emperor's tomb had been absolutely manipulated by Tang Zhoxia on the stage and surrounded him and the princess by groups. Behind them, the guardians also blocked the way. There was no shortage of generals in the army who reached the qi refining stage, and the 16 guardians were all masters in qi refining stage. In front of him were the civil and military officials under the control of Tang Zhoxia, the emperor and the crown prince. Behind him were Tang Ruowei, who was in critical condition and exhausted, and 200 fainted children. You fool. Tang Ruowei stood up with a sword and smiled bitterly. I know you want to remove the evil, but you must also consider your own strength. Here there are thousands of troops and half of the masters of the Shangshuan kingdom. So what? Bai Qiran answered with a slight smile. Consolidating the right path was the responsibility of each Qingming disciple. The so-called right path was a value that would not change with the passage of time. Just like the sky now, even if it's covered by dark clouds, the black and white huddled together to form a dark cloud. However, no matter what era, the black could never become white, killing the innocent, bullying the weak, never getting the praise. He crossed a circle under his feet, fording a simple formation to protect Tang Ruowei, then took 2 steps forward and looked up at Tang Zhoxia. The breeze blew across his sleeves and brought the sound of the drum. Bai Qiran's face showed no fear, as he was standing in front of Tang Ruowei in the zombie cave that day. Indeed, unlike you, this Bai Qiran has no power, no subordinate, and no backing, and my cultivation stage is only qi refining. He untied the iron sword around his waist, pulled his sword out of the sheath and slanted it to the ground. 3 feet long sword, reflected in the cold light, remained motionless. But in Bai Qiran's hand, there is still a sword. With the order of Tang Zhoxia, thousands of troops marched from 3 sides, with Bai Qiran as the center. With the order of Tang Zhoxia, thousands of troops marched from three sides, with Bai Qiran as the center. Swords and spears were like a forest, and archers in the distance pulled their bowstring, shooting arrows like rain. Facing the attack, Bai Qiran raised his sword. With the first sword strike, 1,000-feet-long rift was split on the ground, and the royal mausoleum was smashed into powder. The army on the east was destroyed by the sword key, and their blood and bones were blown away like leaves in the wind, then fell to the ground. With the second sword strike, a bright halo light up the sky, like the sun was exposed through the cloud. As for the army on the west, and more than 1,000 soldiers were divided into two from the waist and died. With the third sword strike, the sea of clouds was torn, the clouds were scattered, and the hurricane was raging. It was like a giant beast in the clouds, sprayed thunder, and the sword key pointed directly at the last army at the north. In the end, the bodies of more than 1,000 soldiers were blown apart by sword key, not even the bones were left. After the three sword strikes, thousands of the best soldiers in Shangshuan Kingdom disappeared, along with the 16 guardians under the leadership of Sima Inbo. Seeing this scene, Sima Inbo was startled. Is this still qi refining stage? Calm down. Tang Zhouxia's face was solemn, but he still said, he knows a lot, and I am afraid that he is a big shot. It is normal for some unusual techniques, but after all, he is still in the qi refining stage. Such an attack must consume a lot of his energy, and you see, his weapon is no longer available. Sima Inbo also saw that after the three swords were waved, Bai Qiran's long sword had only one hilt left. Seeing this, he calmed down and presided over the formation of the guardians. And Tang Zhouxia began to calculate secretly in his heart. This Bai Qiran's origin is not simple, but no matter what, he is only a qi refining stage cultivator. Although these tricks are powerful, they must be very detrimental. Now he cannot be my opponent. After killing him, I can take his blood, and then use the secret method to extract his memory, and then I can run away. In fact, Sima Inbo and others have been lied by him for a long time, thinking that his purpose was to strengthen Shangshuan, but in fact, since he accidentally got the remnants of Blood God sect and set foot on the road to cultivation, he has no interest in Shangshuan anymore. After that, I'll slaughter all the people on the scene and suck their blood. As for the forces behind Bai Qiran, they can only trouble the Shangshuan kingdom, which had nothing to do with me. Harming others for self-interest, taking and using everything that could be obtained to strengthen oneself, this was the modus operandi of cultivation recorded in the remnant of the Blood God sect. The smoke from the sword was gradually dispersed, and the air was filled with a pungent smell of blood. Bai Qiran continued to step forward and walk towards Tang Zhouxia, who was on the altar. The smoke from the sword was gradually dispersed, and the air was filled with a pungent smell of blood. Bai Qiran continued to step forward and walk towards Tang Zhouxia, who was on the altar. Bai Qiran. Sima Inbo shouted at him in anger, "Give up, you don't even have a sword." Hearing his words, Bai Qiran glanced down at the hilt of his sword, then chuckled. Throwing away the remaining hilt on his hand, his figure disappeared. As fast as the electricity, he was suddenly inserted into the formation of 16 guardians. Reaching out a little, his index finger pierced the chest of a guardian, and then that guy suddenly twitched and fell down. His eyes widened, but there was no trace of wounds. His skin quickly became pale, as if all his blood was drained out. His breath gradually languished, the horror on his face showed that his death was painful. Is this? Tang Zhouxia's look was frozen. Blood coagulation. You must be familiar with it, right? Bai Qiran sneered and swept across the remaining 16 guardians. I said to those innocent souls killed by you that I'll make you taste their pain, but there are many ways of painful death in the Blood God sect, so your disciples will take care of the rest. At the end of the speech, he raised his hand, formed a claw, and grabbed towards a guardian who attacked him. The claws flashed, the guardian screamed, and 3 large claw marks on the chest suddenly shot a lot of blood. The blood rushed like a spring, accompanied by severe pain. No matter how the guardian tried to block with true qi, the blood was still gushing endlessly. Soon, the blood ran out and his body collapsed like a deflated balloon and fell to the ground. Bai Qiran moved forward again and the guardians attacked him out of horror, but his hands created thousands of images, turned into claws or swords or spears. Each move was extremely terrifying, evil and fierce. Upon being hit, the guardians died extremely painful and miserable deaths. Either their blood was sprayed from the pores of the whole body, or blood boiled in the body, or blood from the whole body poured into the heart, making vital organs explode. Soon, only Sima Inbo was left in front of Bai Qiran. Brother Bai. He looked terrified, tears and snot flowed out together, begging, I have no choice but to, I know. Baichiran smiled slightly and then patted his forehead without mercy. Gu, Sima Inbo's whole blood suddenly gathered towards his forehead, and the young man's entire head swelled, and then burst open with a bang. After stepping over the corpses of the guardian, Baichiran stepped on the blood step by step and slowly came to the altar, facing Tang Zhoxia. How much energy do you have left? Tang Zhoxia narrowed his eyes, his body was tight, and there was cold sweat leaching from behind as he was secretly alert. You guess. Baichiran answered with a smile. I haven't reached the foundation establishment stage anyway. Tang Zhoxia confronted him for a few seconds, and suddenly a mouth blew a blood light from his mouth. Baichiran reached out and grasped the blood light in his hand. The blood light turned out to be a small blood-colored flying sword. He pinched it in the 5 fingers and played back and forth. Tang Zhoxia's forehead exuded a little cold sweat. With his hands behind his back, 2 black command flags broke from the headless corpse of Sima Inbo, attacked from behind Baichiran and released fire. But Baichiran turned his head and blew. His majestic chi blew out the sea of fire in an instant, then he caught the 2 flags and tore them into pieces. Fellow Taoist. Tang Zhoxia stepped back and said, I don't think we need to oppose each other. Baichiran ignored him but walked towards him with a kind smile. Tang Zhoxia made a scream, and his body suddenly disintegrated into a pool of blood mist. He wanted to run away but Baichiran rushed to the point where his body completely collapsed, reached out and grabbed one of his arms, removing him from the blood mist state. Holding his arm to suppress Tang Zhoxia, Baichiran smiled at him. Have you heard of the secret technique of Blood God Sect? Blood Soul Annihilation? What? Tang Zhoxia was stunned, but Baichiran had already begun to perform moves. His hands once again made thousands of mirages or fists, fingers, claws, or palms, and slashed at the vital points in Tang Zhoxia's body. The true chi turned into the evil ki, and the blood in Tang Zhoxia's body was boiled, stirring back and forth, gave him the unspeakable pain and shattered the meridians, bones and spiritual roots of Tang Zhoxia's whole body into powder. Ah! The former Shangshuan emperor issued a terrifying scream, but he couldn't escape. After Baichiran finished a set, he stretched out his hand and twisted Tang Zhoxia's arm, forcing him to a position that facing himself. The last palm crashed and fell from the top of Tang Zhoxia's head. A lot of blood spit out from his 7 orifices. The blood in his body retrograded and rushed to his brain, completely crushed his soul. Baichiran let go of his hand, and Tang Zhoxia's bloody body fell to the altar, and blood ran down the ground. Baichiran let go of his hand, and Tang Zhoxia's bloody body fell to the altar, and blood ran down the ground. He turned around, wiped off the dust from his body, and then looked at the 200 boys and girls, the civil and military officials, and the Princess Tang Ruowei who was still standing. The girls stared straight at him, and after thinking about it, Baichiran wiped the blood on her hands, and showed her a harmless smile. To kill the grass, eliminate all roots. He pointed to the body around him and said, He is the one who makes the first move. I know. Tang Ruowei nodded blankly. Well? At this moment, the spiritual advisor Fu Qianxiu, who was standing next to the altar, suddenly covered his head and uttered a sore sigh. After a while, the Shangshuan emperor also held his head and groaned. It seems that when Tang Zhoxia died, the demonic techniques that controlled the people's hearts that were cast on them disappeared, and the cultivation level of the spiritual advisor and Shangshuan emperor was regarded as the highest in the field, so they woke up first. However, those thousands of soldiers are different. In order to increase their combat power, Tang Zhoxia has used demonic methods to transform them into something like a corpse soldier, so Baichiran had no psychological pressure to kill them. On the contrary, he made it easier for Baichiran. Although Baichiran could forcefully break through the troops and kill him, he would certainly have to spend a lot of effort. Tang Zhoxia transformed these soldiers into undead beings, and the process could not be reversed. It would be better to kill them and make it easier for them to return to the reincarnation wheel as soon as possible. Father Emperor. Seeing Emperor Shangshuan covering his head, seemed sober, Tang Ruowei hurriedly came to the altar and helped him. Are you okay? Why is my head so painful? Emperor Shangshuan shook his head and said, I remember that I'm doing the heaven-worshipping ceremony. What happened after that? Is such that. Tang Ruowei began to tell the story of her father, while Baichiran was using earth escape technique to dive into the ground by himself, as he still had things to do. Those innocent people who were captured by Sima Inbo and others for Tang Xie to build the formation, their souls were still tied to the formation under the altar and could not be released. As soon as he entered the hollow in this stratum, Bai Qiran's nose smelled a pungent smell of blood. In his spiritual vision, all the people who had been slaughtered gathered towards him. Their features were like melted wax figures. Their eyes and mouth had become dark hollows, looking extraordinarily painful and horrible. As soon as he entered the hollow in this stratum, Bai Qiran's nose smelled a pungent smell of blood. In his spiritual vision, all the people who had been slaughtered gathered towards him. Their features were like melted wax figures. Their eyes and mouth had become dark hollows, looking extraordinarily painful and horrible. Bai Qiran stomped, his chi poured out and ruined the formation on the ground that restrained their freedom, and then he began to use the soul-cleansing technique to send these lost souls to the underworld. However, his method was different from the soul-cleansing method of the heavenly Buddha sect. Those monks used mantra chanting to clean up the grievances from the souls and connect to the underworld to send souls over. Because this wasn't the formal channel, these souls have to wait for a long time to enter the reincarnation wheel. Bai Qiran's method was much simpler. To some extent, his method was to call the police directly and ask the police to handle the victims. After making a few runes, Bai Qiran stopped. 2 minutes later, a crisp cricket sound that only near-death people like him could hear from near to far, came slowly from the void. In the midst of nothingness, there was a dark road winding, and then Bai Qiran saw that the figure of Xueling, his old friend, slowly solidified from nothingness and walked towards him. The soul taker still had a dead face with no expression. He put the mule in his hand back and asked, "Bai Qiran, why do you use the spell to call me?" "Well?" Bai Qiran looked up in the direction of the ghosts gathered in this hollow. The ghosts instinctively felt a kind of fear because of the soul taker. "Those souls, that's your job." Xueling swept around the soul there and frowned slightly. "So many dying people who haven't reached the end of their lives in the book of life and death. What have you done in this world?" Still the same cliché, a demonic cultivator wants to improve himself, killing people, taking blood, restraining the soul, and then preparing to perform sacrifices. Bai Qiran replied, "But I have already destroyed the soul of that guy. You don't have to search for him." Humph. Xueling snorted coldly but did not say anything. For the inhuman murderer like Tang Zhoxia who had done too many damages, soul takers would take them to Abi Hell, where their souls were tortured until being completely destroyed. Bai Qiran's action, in a way, saved the effort of the underworld. Xueling took out an iron chain. It originally looked like a one-arm-long soul iron chain, but it could stretch indefinitely. Xueling bound all the ghosts' wrists here and lined them up in a row, while Bai Qiran watching the whole time. In the end he asked, "Hey, this time can I count it in your merit books again?" "That's it." Xueling tightened the iron chain in her hand and replied, "But you have repeatedly escaped the life limitation. Don't think that you can make up for it so easily." I know." Bai Qiran nodded. He was too debt-ridden anyway, and he never thought that he could clean his criminal record. Xueling formed all the ghosts into a long line, and stood on the trail that extended from nothing, then as if suddenly remembering something, he looked at Bai Qiran and said, "Yes, Bai Qiran, you, what?" Bai Qiran touched his head, wondering. "No, nothing." Xueling retracted his gaze, pulled the iron chain in his hand and pulled out a paper lantern. The lantern shimmered and illuminated the path in the void. "Leave and follow me." In the darkness, the sound of the crippled mules resounded, accompanied by a sound of groaning from nowhere, and the ghost with a blue face took a long line of ghosts and slowly walked into the void, disappeared. "Hey, what did you say?" Bai Qiran was still thinking about Xueling's restless expression before, but couldn't think of what he had to say to himself. He had to clap his hands and muttered, "Maybe he just wants to tease me." He performed earth escape again and his body emerged from the solid ground of the emperor's mausoleum, but before standing still, he heard someone shouting beside him. "Come out. He's out." Bai Qiran turned his head and found that the Shangshuan emperor and the spiritual advisor were pointing at him in excitement, while Tang Ruowei beside him was pulling his father's robe with a flushed face. The civil and military officials present seemed to have sobered up. At present, they formed a circle around and watching him emerging from the ground together. While Bai Qiran stood up, he looked at them silently, while Tang Ruowei coughed and reminded, "Father Emperor, manners, manners?" Ahem. Shangshuan Emperor coughed softly to cover up his malady. He thought about it and then looked at Bai Qiran with some hesitation. "The great immortal, this time I would like to thank you for your help. I am on behalf of the thousands of people in the Shangshuan kingdom, thank you for your kindness." "Well, it doesn't matter." Bai Qiran waved his hand. "I'm leaving now." "The great immortal, at least let me thank you and show my gratitude." The Shangshuan emperor shouted to him. No, you can't afford what I want. Then at least let me set up a feast. I do not want to eat. Bai Qiran refused decisively, then he beckoned to the spiritual advisor Fu Qianxiu. There is something I want to ask the spiritual advisor over there. You deal with things here first and I will come to you later. This jade pendant is the only thing left by the Qingming disciple who teaches you cultivation method. This jade pendant is the only thing left by the Qingming disciple who teaches you cultivation method? In the palace of the spiritual advisor, Bai Qiran sat in the main seat, looking at a piece of jade pendant in his hand. This jade pendant was equivalent to the Qingming sword sect's disciple identity card, which recorded information and permissions of the holder. Bai Qiran himself also has a piece of it. Looking at the style of this jade pendant, the owner of this jade pendant should belong to the 6th generation of inner disciples of the Qingming sect. When they traveled down the mountain 200 years ago, some people did not return. Yes, the disciple was originally a peasant who farmed in the western border of Shangshuan. Because he had retained my house for one night, he awarded me the cultivation method. Although the spiritual advisor Fu Qianxiu was in the foundation establishment stage, after watching the traces of damage left by the emperor's tomb, he was naturally afraid to take it easy in the face of the qi refining stage by Qiran. He answered Bai Qiran's problem very respectfully. Unfortunately, I still failed to save the life of my master. It's okay, it's not your fault. A true cultivator must go through the calamity. It is normal to fall down on the path. He died in the battle with demons to save the innocent. Qingming sword sect will be proud of him. Bai Qiran took back the jade pendant. I will bring this jade pendant back. The method he passed on to you is the most orthodox method of Qingming sword sect. With your qualifications, it's also possible for you to practice well and get into the golden core stage in your lifetime. Having said that, he had some envy in his tone, adding, treasure it, Qingming sword sect's method is the right path. This disciple remember. Fu Qianxiu replied. One more thing. After Bai Qiran put the jade pendant into his bag, he continued to ask, after coming down the mountain, I heard that you instigated Shangshuan Emperor to impose heavy taxes on the people of Shangshen Kingdom, and then used the revenue to refine pills. Is this true? It's true. Fu Qianxiu was ashamed. Remember, except to take some pill when you hit the bottleneck, at other times you should not take the pill to increase your level. It will make your foundation unstable. Bai Qiran taught the lesson lightly and then asked again. But what kind of pill do you make? What? Fu Qianxiu touched his head and said, yeah, what am I making? Bai Qiran stared at him for a few seconds, then suddenly raised his hand and slapped him. Demon-possessing Taoist conviction. Looked like not all things in the remnant was shallow. The so-called demon-possessing Taoist conviction was a high-level spiritual technique of the demonic cultivator. It was created by a stunning and talented demonic cultivator of the Nether Spirit sect 2,000 years ago. Unlike other manipulation methods which oppress targets' consciousness, this technique would not capture the subject's consciousness, but change the subject's concept in a subtle way, guiding them step by step to complete what the caster wants them to complete. As the saying goes, it takes 3 years to learn good habits but 3 days to learn bad habits. That demonic cultivator used this trick to guide many cultivators stuck in the bottleneck period into the demonic road. Then he heard that Qingming sword sect had a self-disciplined disciple of Qingming Taoist, who was stuck in the bottleneck of the qi refining stage for more than 1,000 years. Later, there was no later. After 2 slaps, Fu Qianxiu was dizzy, but he only thought that Bai Qiran punished him because he exploited the people's money to refine the pill, so he didn't dare to resist. After 2 slaps, Fu Qianxiu was dizzy, but he only thought that Bai Qiran punished him because he exploited the people's money to refine the pill, so he didn't dare to resist. How about it? Seeing Fu Qianxiu shaking his head, Bai Qiran continued to ask, are you awake? Awake? What is awake? Fu Qianxiu asked in doubt, isn't the senior punishing this disciple? I'll ask you again, you exploited the people's money to make pills for the Emperor Xianxian. What pill did you make? Bai Qiran asked. What pill? Fu Qianxiu thought for a moment with a confused look and suddenly realized, yeah, I've refined pill. I've never learned its recipe and never seen it. Why did I make that pill? Do you have any pill? Bai Qiran extended his hand. Show me. Fu Qianxiu took the pill out and handed it to Bai Qiran. He opened it and found out that it was made from the few materials that he was missing. It's just a common pill often used by the demonic cultivator, mixing with some herbs used to treat erectile dysfunction. It seemed that staying in the gloomy imperial tomb all these years made Tang Zhouxie impotence. It's a waste. Bai Qiran was distressed because the pill had already been refined, and he could no longer extract the material from it, and only a blaze of fire had destroyed the elixir. Well, I will go back now. You have already practiced the Qingming sword sect's method, and you can be regarded as a half-disciple of Qingming sword sect. I will accept you as a named disciple on his behalf. You must remember to help the emperor to go on the right path. After destroying these pills, Bai Qiran stood up and instructed, "Lest you be manipulated again next time, I will teach you a technique, Qingming mental forging. Practice it more, strengthen your soul, so that you will not be easily manipulated by others." After solving the problem of the spiritual advisor, Bai Qiran left the palace and set out on the road back to the mountain. He always felt like he had forgotten something, but he couldn't remember it for a while. He simply set aside and concentrated on his way. Riding a horse, Bai Qiran walked slowly to the outskirts of the capital of the Shangshuan kingdom. Then on the side of the road he saw Tang Ruowei wearing a goose-yellow dress. The eldest princess sat in the open space by the side of the road, accompanied by two maids. A shaded tent was built here, and there was a table of good wine and food under the tent. When seeing Bai Qiran walking on a horse, Tang Ruowei smiled brightly and greeted him. "I knew you would come over. Bai Qiran, this time I'll treat you. Can you come down and have a drink with me?" Bai Qiran rode on his horse, tilted his head and then laughed. "It's disrespectful to refuse." He came to the opposite of Tang Ruowei as the maid took care of the horse for him. Then the two sat opposite each other and Tang Ruowei poured a cup of wine. "You're leaving. I won't keep you, but for everything you did for the people of Shangshuan Kingdom as a princess, I must thank you." Tang Ruowei raised her glass and said, "I know that there is nothing in Shangshuan Kingdom that can get in your eyes, so this glass of wine is my gratitude, my respect for you." The princess, with a heartfelt gesture, drank the fine wine in a glass in one sip, and immediately coughed. Seeing her like this, Bai Qiran smiled and then drank his own wine. Ahem. Tang Ruowei spit out her little tongue while fanning the wind with her hands. "I don't understand why you like to drink this stuff. I don't know what others think. Anyway, I drink alcohol for mood." Bai Qiran put down his glass. "But now, Tang Ruowei, did you change your view of the cultivator and Qingming sword sect now?" "Yeah." Tang Ruowei nodded. "At least there are people like you among the cultivators. Every group is the same, there are good ones and there are bad ones. In the righteous alliance, there will be deceit and concealment every time, and even the largest evil sect, occasionally one or two demonic cultivators with righteousness can appear." Bai Qiran laughed. "After all, cultivators are still human and these are normal. I probably understand." Tang Ruowei said thoughtfully. Next, the two pushed the cups for a change of food, staggered, and ate up a table full of wine and wine. They were very happy. In the end, the princess took a slightly drunk face, spit out the fragrance and asked with a smile, "Bai Qiran, as a farewell gift, I can answer you another question." "Any problem?" Bai Qiran asked. "Any problem is fine." Tang Ruowei nodded affirmatively. "That?" Bai Qiran's eyes swept across Tang Ruowei's chest, then asked, "Have you learned a cultivation technique called Creator's Body Forging Technique? It was co-created by me and one of my old friends. He is no longer alive and I want to ask on behalf of him." Creator's Body Forging Technique? Perhaps she was a bit drunk and Tang Ruowei's mouth couldn't keep words. "What is that? I haven't learned it." "What?" Bai Qiran wondered. "Then how can Her Highness's sexuality change so much?" The words fell off, and Bai Qiran suddenly felt the murderous intention and pressure that even him was secretly frightened. It's a very serious academic discussion. Why is she suddenly angry? Walking on the official road, Bai Qiran wondered. Just now suddenly Tang Ruowei hit him like crazy, while screaming with high tone as if he had harassed her. Although Bai Qiran was not afraid of her, he didn't want to be entangled with a little girl, so he abandoned his horse, ran out with full speed, and now he was a few hundred miles away from Shangshuan Kingdom. Understanding a woman's heart is really as hard as finding a needle in the bottom of the sea. Bai Qiran couldn't understand but shook his head and sighed. Without the horse, Bai Qiran's moving speed was accelerated. As he walked while admiring the scenery, it didn't take long for him to walk out of the distance of 20 or 30 miles and came under a willow tree. When he came here, Bai Qiran suddenly felt a very cold shade covering the surrounding area. He looked surprised at the direction in which the atmosphere spread, and found that Xueling was standing there with a blue face looking at him. "Xueling." Bai Qiran was surprised. "Why are you coming to me today?" "Bai Qiran, have you forgotten something?" Xueling said coldly. "When you come down the mountain this time, besides refining a foundation-build pill, what is your other purpose?" What the hell are you talking about? Besides advancing to the foundation establishment stage, I have no other purpose in my life. When Bai Qiran was talking, his voice suddenly dropped and cold sweat ran down his forehead. Well, what is my lifespan limit? It has run out. Xueling sneered and shook the iron chain of his hands. Just when you were drinking and eating with that girl. Okay. Bai Qiran took a step back seriously, saying, Xueling, you and I have known each other for 2,000 years. Can I ask for a delay to pay my debt? Xueling smiled. What do you say? Suddenly, on the surrounding ground appeared with countless soul takers, whose strengths ranged from physique integration to great ascension, led by Xueling, surrounded by Qiran. Bai Qiran. The soul taker who has a bad relationship for more than 2,000 years with Bai Qiran tossed out the iron chain and turned it into a large net covering the sky. I'll arrest you today. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.